They paid me $70,000 to do a $200,000 job, and acted like I should be grateful. When I married Sarah, I thought I was getting a loving wife and maybe some occasional help at her family's small bakery. I never imagined I'd end up fighting for my life's work against the very people who once welcomed me with open arms. My name is Marcus, and I'm 32 years old. I grew up in the heart of downtown, where my dad ran a small auto repair shop and my mom worked as a school secretary. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed. Our house was filled with the sounds of classic rock from Dad's radio and the smell of Mom's famous meatloaf every Sunday. After high school, I went to community college for business administration while working nights at a local restaurant to pay my way through. Sarah came from a completely different world. Her family, the Hendersons, owned a chain of 3 successful bakeries across our city. Her father, Robert, was a meticulous man who measured everything twice and trusted no one completely. Her mother, Linda, was the creative force behind their signature pastries and had a way of making customers feel like family. Sarah herself was their only child and had been groomed since childhood to take over the business someday. We met at a coffee shop near the college campus. I was studying for my final exams, stressed about paying rent, when she sat down at the table next to mine. She was sketching cake designs in a worn notebook, completely absorbed in her work. When she accidentally knocked over her coffee, I helped her clean it up, and we started talking. She told me about her dream of revolutionizing the family bakery business with modern marketing techniques and online ordering systems. I was fascinated by her passion and business acumen. Our relationship developed slowly over months of study sessions and casual dates. Sarah was careful not to mention too much about her family's wealth, and I respected that. I assumed they were comfortable but had no idea of the true scope of their success until she finally invited me to meet her parents 6 months later. Walking into Henderson's bakery for the first time was overwhelming. The main location was enormous, with gleaming display cases filled with elaborate cakes and pastries, industrial-grade ovens that could feed a small army, and a staff of at least 15 people bustling around in coordinated chaos. Robert greeted me with a firm handshake and immediately started questioning my background, my goals, and my intentions with his daughter. Linda was warmer but equally probing, asking about my family's business and what I planned to do after graduation. That first dinner at their suburban mansion was awkward. They clearly appreciated that I was working my way through school, but I could sense their concern about Sarah dating someone from such a different economic background. Robert kept steering the conversation toward business topics, testing my knowledge and opinions. Linda watched my table manners like a hawk, though she tried to be subtle about it. Despite the initial tension, I gradually earned their respect. Robert appreciated my work ethic and business education, while Linda liked that I genuinely cared about Sarah's happiness rather than her family's money. More importantly, Sarah and I were genuinely happy together. She supported my dreams of starting my own consulting business, while I encouraged her innovative ideas for modernizing the bakeries. After dating for 2 years, I proposed with a simple ring I'd saved up for months to buy. Sarah said yes immediately, and her parents seemed genuinely pleased. The engagement party they threw was modest by their standards, but more elaborate than anything my family had ever experienced. My parents were intimidated but tried their best to fit in, bringing homemade cookies that Linda praised genuinely and asked for the recipe. The wedding itself was beautiful. We held it at a local vineyard, with flowers from Linda's garden and a cake from their flagship bakery. My groomsmen were my college buddies and my younger brother Jake, while Sarah's bridesmaids included her childhood friends and 2 cousins. The ceremony felt perfect, surrounded by people who loved us. For our first year of marriage, everything seemed ideal. I graduated and started working as a junior consultant at a mid-sized firm while Sarah took on more responsibilities at the bakeries. We rented a small apartment downtown, splitting expenses evenly despite Sarah's family offering to help with a house down payment. We both wanted to prove we could make it on our own first. The turning point came during our 2nd year of marriage. Robert suffered a mild heart attack and was forced to step back from daily operations. The doctors said he needed to reduce his stress levels significantly. Linda was overwhelmed trying to manage the creative side while also handling Robert's administrative duties. They asked Sarah to take over as general manager of all 3 locations, and she asked if I might consider leaving my consulting job to help her. Initially, I was hesitant. I'd worked hard to build my career and wasn't sure about mixing business with family. But Sarah painted a compelling picture of how we could modernize the bakeries together, implementing the digital marketing strategies I'd learned in school and the operational efficiency techniques for my consulting work. More importantly, she emphasized how much her parents needed us, especially Robert's fragile health. After long discussions with my parents and mentors, I decided to take a leap of faith. I gave my consulting firm 2 weeks' notice and joined Henderson's Bakery as assistant general manager, working directly under Sarah. Robert and Linda seemed relieved to have someone they trusted helping their daughter navigate the challenges ahead. The first few months were exhilarating. Sarah and I worked side by side, restructuring inventory systems, launching social media campaigns, and implementing online ordering platforms. Our teamwork was seamless, and the results were impressive. Sales increased by 30% across all 3 locations, and customer satisfaction ratings reached all-time highs. Robert recovered enough to handle basic administrative tasks from home, while Linda focused entirely on recipe development and staff training. I poured my heart and soul into those bakeries. I arrived early every morning to check overnight bread production, stayed late to balance daily receipts, and worked weekends to coordinate special events. I redesigned their entire supply chain management system, negotiated better deals with vendors, and created detailed financial projections that helped them secure a loan for equipment upgrades. Most importantly, I treated every employee like family, learning their names, remembering their birthdays, and genuinely caring about their well-being. The success was intoxicating, but it also created unexpected tensions. Some long-term employees resented taking orders from someone who wasn't a real Henderson. A few customers complained that the bakeries were losing their family charm in favor of corporate efficiency. Most challenging was the dynamic between Sarah and me when we disagreed on business decisions. What started as professional differences occasionally spilled over into our personal relationship. Despite these challenges, by the end of my second year with the company, we had expanded to a 4th location and were considering franchising opportunities. I had effectively become the operational brain of the entire enterprise, while Sarah focused on strategic planning and maintaining relationships with key customers. Robert's health had stabilized, and Linda was happier than ever, freed from administrative burdens to focus on what she loved most. That's when everything started unraveling. Robert, feeling better and perhaps nostalgic for his more active role, began questioning many of the changes I'd implemented. He complained that the new computer systems were too complicated and that we were spending too much money on marketing. More troublingly, he started making comments about the business getting too big too fast and losing its personal touch. Linda, influenced by Robert's growing concerns, began expressing doubts about some of my vendor relationships and questioning whether we really needed all the new equipment I'd recommended. She worried that I was pushing the business in directions that prioritized profit over the family values that had made them successful. Sarah found herself caught in the middle, trying to support both her husband and her parents. She agreed with most of my business decisions but understood her parents' emotional attachment to the way things used to be. Our conversations at home became increasingly strained as she tried to balance everyone's competing interests. The tension reached a breaking point during a family meeting about expanding to a 5th location. I had prepared a comprehensive business plan showing strong market demand, favorable lease terms, and projected profitability within 18 months. Robert listened politely, then announced that he thought we should slow down expansion and focus on maintaining quality at our existing locations. When I pushed back with data showing that our current growth trajectory could make us the dominant bakery chain in the region, Robert's response shocked me. He said that maybe rapid expansion was my dream, not necessarily what was best for the Henderson family legacy. Linda nodded in agreement, adding that she was concerned about the debt load required for another location. Sarah supported my position initially, but when faced with her parents' united opposition, she began wavering. She suggested we table the expansion discussion for 6 months while we consolidated our current operations. I felt betrayed, having spent weeks developing the proposal and believing we were aligned on our growth strategy. Over the following months, Robert and Linda became increasingly critical of my management style. They complained that I was too focused on efficiency and not enough on employee morale. They questioned my decision to discontinue some traditional recipes that weren't selling well, saying I was destroying their brand identity. Most painfully, they started having private conversations with Sarah about business decisions, effectively excluding me from discussions about the company I'd helped transform. The final straw came during our annual employee Christmas party. I had organized a nice event at a local restaurant, with bonuses for all staff and recognition awards for outstanding performance. Robert stood up to give a speech and spent 10 minutes talking about the importance of family traditions and staying true to their original values. Then he announced that he and Linda had decided to restructure the management team to ensure the business stayed aligned with Henderson family principles. Effective January 1st, Sarah would become president and CEO of Henderson's Bakery, with full authority over all strategic decisions. I would continue as operations manager, reporting directly to her, but with reduced responsibilities for financial planning and vendor relations. Robert would return as chairman of the board, providing oversight and guidance on major initiatives. Linda would become creative director, with veto power over any recipe changes or menu modifications. I was humiliated. In front of all our employees and their families, I'd been publicly demoted from Sarah's business partner to essentially a senior employee. The message was clear: despite my contributions to their success, I would always be an outsider in the Henderson family business. That night, Sarah and I had the worst fight of our marriage. She tried to explain that her parents were scared of losing control of their life's work and that the restructuring was just a way to make them feel more secure. She insisted that nothing would really change in terms of our day-to-day working relationship and that my contributions were still valued. I told her that her parents had made it clear they didn't trust me with significant responsibility and that I felt like a hired employee rather than a family member. More importantly, I was hurt that she had participated in this decision without discussing it with me privately first. She had chosen her parents' feelings over our partnership. Sarah broke down crying, saying she was torn between the two most important relationships in her life. She begged me to try the new structure for a few months to see if we could make it work. Against my better judgment, I agreed, hoping that time might heal the wounds and restore some balance to our family dynamics. The next few months were miserable. Robert second-guessed every decision I made, requiring approval for purchases I'd previously handled independently. Linda constantly questioned operational changes I'd implemented, asking me to explain and justify systems that had been working perfectly for months. Worst of all, Sarah began deferring to her parents on issues where she'd previously supported my recommendations. I watched helplessly as some of the efficiencies I'd created began to erode under the weight of bureaucracy and second-guessing. Vendor relationships became strained when Robert insisted on renegotiating contracts I'd already finalized. Employee morale declined as they sensed the tension between management and struggled to understand who was really in charge. The breaking point came in April. I had identified a critical problem with one of our main suppliers, who was consistently delivering flour with inconsistent protein content that was affecting bread quality. I recommended switching to a more reliable supplier who charged slightly more but guaranteed consistency. Robert refused, saying we shouldn't abandon long-time partners over minor quality issues. 2 weeks later, a bad batch of flour resulted in an entire day's worth of bread that had to be thrown away, costing us thousands of dollars and disappointing dozens of customers. When I pointed out that this proved my concerns were valid, Robert accused me of sabotaging the relationship with our original supplier to prove I was right. That accusation was the last straw. I realized that no matter how hard I worked or how much I contributed, I would always be viewed with suspicion. Robert and Linda saw me as an ambitious outsider who was trying to steal their family legacy, rather than someone who genuinely cared about the business and their daughter's happiness. I made the painful decision to resign from Henderson's Bakery, effective immediately. I couldn't continue working in an environment where my judgment was constantly questioned and my motives were viewed suspiciously. More importantly, the stress was destroying my marriage to Sarah, and I hoped that removing the business complications might help us focus on our personal relationship. Sarah was devastated when I told her about my decision. She begged me to reconsider, promising to talk to her parents about giving me more autonomy. But I explained that the problem wasn't just about authority or decision-making power. Her parents had made it clear that they would never fully trust me, and I couldn't build a career in a place where I wasn't truly welcomed as family. My resignation created shockwaves throughout the Henderson family. Robert and Linda seemed simultaneously relieved and panicked, happy to have full control again but terrified about managing the operational complexity I'd been handling. Sarah was overwhelmed with the prospect of running everything herself while also trying to save our marriage. For the next month, I applied for jobs while watching from the sidelines as the bakery struggled with my absence. Sarah worked 18-hour days trying to handle responsibilities that I'd managed alongside my regular duties. Robert's stress levels spiked as he tried to remember systems he'd previously criticized as too complicated. Linda found herself buried in administrative tasks she'd successfully avoided for months. Meanwhile, Sarah and I attended couples counseling, trying to figure out whether our marriage could survive the business fallout. The therapist helped us realize that we'd allowed professional pressures to contaminate our personal relationship and that we needed to establish clearer boundaries between family and business. In June, I received a job offer from a regional restaurant chain that wanted me to help them expand into the bakery market. The salary was excellent, the growth potential was enormous, and most importantly, I would be working for people who appreciated my skills and trusted my judgment. I accepted immediately. When I told Sarah about my new job, she broke down again. She confessed that the bakery was struggling without my operational expertise and that her parents were finally realizing how much I'd contributed to their success. She asked if there was any way I might consider coming back, with better terms and more respect for my role. I told her it was too late. The trust had been broken, and I'd found an opportunity where I could build something new without the complicated family dynamics. More importantly, I'd realized that my happiness and career satisfaction were too important to sacrifice for people who would never truly accept me. The hardest part was that this decision effectively meant choosing between my wife and my professional future. Sarah couldn't leave the family business, especially with her father's health issues and her mother's dependence on her leadership. But I couldn't return to a situation that had nearly destroyed my self-confidence and professional reputation. We tried for several more months to make the marriage work while building separate careers, but the strain was too much. Sarah was consumed with trying to stabilize the bakery business while dealing with her parents' criticism of every decision. I was working long hours trying to prove myself in a new industry while processing the emotional trauma of feeling rejected by her family. In September, we made the mutual decision to separate. It was the most heartbreaking conversation of my life, but we both recognized that we'd reached an impasse. Sarah couldn't abandon her family legacy, and I couldn't sacrifice my professional dignity for people who would never respect my contributions. The divorce proceedings were relatively amicable, since we'd kept our finances mostly separate and had no children together. Sarah kept the apartment we'd shared, and I moved back in with my parents temporarily while looking for my own place. The most painful part was dividing up the memories and mementos from our life together, especially the photos and keepsakes from our wedding day. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Henderson's Bakery had closed one of their 4 locations due to operational difficulties and financial losses. Apparently, they'd struggled to maintain the efficiency standards I'd established and had lost several major corporate accounts due to delivery problems and quality issues. Part of me felt vindicated that my contributions had been more valuable than Robert and Linda realized. But mostly, I felt sad that their stubbornness and suspicion had cost them their business success and cost Sarah and me our marriage. If they'd been willing to truly accept me as family and trust my professional judgment, we might all have built something amazing together. Today, I'm the Regional Operations Director for a growing bakery chain with 12 locations across 3 states. My boss values my insights, my colleagues respect my expertise, and I have clear authority to make the decisions necessary for success. I'm also engaged to Rachel, a wonderful woman I met through work who understands the importance of trust and communication in both personal and professional relationships. Sarah and I exchange brief, friendly messages on birthdays and holidays, but we've both moved on with our lives. I hope she's found happiness, whether in running the family business or pursuing new opportunities. I also hope that her parents eventually learn to value trust and partnership over control and suspicion. Looking back, I realize that this experience taught me invaluable lessons about the importance of family dynamics in business partnerships, the danger of mixing personal and professional relationships without clear boundaries, and the necessity of working with people who genuinely respect and trust your contributions. I don't regret the years I spent trying to build something with Sarah and her family, because those experiences made me stronger and wiser. But I'm grateful that I had the courage to walk away when it became clear that the situation was destructive to everyone involved. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is recognize when a relationship or situation isn't working and choose your own happiness and dignity over the comfort of familiar dysfunction. That's exactly what I did, and despite the pain of losing my marriage, I'm proud that I stood up for myself and refused to accept a role that diminished my worth and potential. The Henderson family started a war they thought they could win through control and manipulation. Instead, they lost a dedicated family member who might have helped them build an empire. Their loss became my opportunity to find people who truly value what I bring to the table. And that's a victory I can live with.